In our case, we decided to go with Virginia Military Institute versus United States of America. In this case, the overall summary is that VMI did not allow women into its educational programs, and therefore the United States of America brought suit against VMI because it felt that this was unconstitutional. I am on the side that says women should be allowed into VMI. My first point is that VMI should allow women in because for women to have a proper education, they need to be given an equal institute. So what VMI originally tried to do was create a women's institution called Virginia Women's Institute for Leadership. And although this was on paper a good idea, it did not have the same type of fundamental structure as VMI. And if we're looking at precedents, there was a case called Sweet versus Painter, which basically had something to do with an African American trying to get into the University of Texas Law School, and they were not allowed into that law school because of race. So what the University of Texas attempted to do was create a law school for minorities. And what ended up happening is that this creation of another institute was struck down because it was not fundamentally equal. And therefore, my first point has to do with the fact that in creating this institute for women, VMI was not giving equal protection to women that were trying to apply to VMI. And my second point, I really just feel like in an ideal society, we would not be dealing with such an issue. And this kind of has to do with the ideological approach, which says that law would be, in a perfect society, law would be a moral absolute and represent desirable behavior. The only problem is that we do not live in a perfect society. So unfortunately, we must protect those that are not protected, and laws sometimes do not apply to all people. And in this case, this approach is not able to be implemented because we do not live in a perfect society. Therefore, it is our right and our privilege to protect these people that are, in this specific case, women that are not being protected. My third point is that VMI violates the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, which basically gives equal rights to all people. And in itself, violating the Constitution should be enough to force VMI to allow women into its institute. Women are clearly being denied a more thorough education, and therefore there's almost a feel that they are forfeiting their God-given rights, and that is something that must not be allowed. My fourth point is that by not allowing women into VMI, society is stating that a women's education is not important, and that it is acceptable to sit back and allow this type of discrimination to occur. We are no longer stuck in the times of medieval thinking. We are progressive. Society has changed, and as should the educational system. No one should be left out of the educational system as a whole, especially when the men at VMI are receiving a certain regimen, and the women at the leadership institute they're trying to create would not be receiving the same type of strict educational programs. Finally, my fifth point is simply the fact that had VMI created an institute for women that was exactly the same, we might have not had to come to this point where the Supreme Court had to hear such a case. Had they just created an equal premise for females, there would have been no complaints. So now we're at the point where VMI should allow women in, and if they decide not to apply or they decide to leave, that's their choice, but at least they're given the opportunity to be a part of such a grand opportunity to further their education.